2021 is over and has been for a bit now, and it is time for me to go ahead and reminisce about the games I played by putting them into a generic top 10 ranking. I didn't actually play as many games as I normally do, that being 30 plus fully completed, but I still managed to play a good variety, and with that said, let's go on to my top 10 games of 2021. Number 10. Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen. Now, this is a game that I had heard lots of praise and been recommended quite a bit, and finally picked it up on a Steam sale. There was a lot I liked, but also disliked. My favourite thing was the grappling and climbing onto enemies, as it was such a unique mechanic, allowing different points of attack and adding a bit of variety to the combat. Every time I discovered a new creature, my goal was to mount it as soon as possible. There were times where, due to your orientation on the creature, meant that trying to move one way actually sent you in the opposite direction. A bit annoying at times, but it was still worth it. The world itself is a dark and realistic medieval setting, where it is dangerous to venture out unprepared. The gameplay reflects this. Early game enemies can damage you severely, a companion falling can be crippling in a run of a dungeon, your max health depletes as you take damage, so you've always got less and less to go on. If your stamina runs out, you are vulnerable for a few seconds, and if you carry more gear, it will reduce the amount of stamina you have and the recovery of that stamina, meaning that it can be an actual strategy to carry no armor. Fortunately, as you play, you do get increasingly stronger through leveling and earning new gear, so early game enemies get disposed of easier, and you can even go ahead and take on multiple large beasts. The thing I liked most about gear was that Chop sold useful gear that you can actually keep for quite a while, as most games will instantly give you a better drop after a shop, but you keep returning to the main hub, and the gear you have can always be crafted and improved, so it's kind of nice because you're investing in yourself. The story was okay, it was very ominous, mysterious, and a bit weird at times, as is tradition from Japanese devs, but I absolutely hated the ending. It was one of those where the writer was trying to sound pretentious with a philosophical monologue about what is life, what does it mean to exist, what is faith, blah blah blah, and I just felt that my 35-hour playthrough, amounting to this weird philosophical debate with your actions kind of meaning nothing in the end of it, was kind of a huge waste. Number 9. Battlefield 1. Each year I go through many phases: Star Wars, medieval fantasy, anime, but this year I had an unexpected one, which was World War I after watching the anime The Saga of Tanya the Evil. Following this, I watched 1917, I then played Verdun for quite a bit, but I then desired something a little bit more high budget, high fidelity, and Battlefield 1 happened to be dirt cheap at the time. I pretty much loved it immediately. The map variety was awesome, from the mountains to trenches to deserts, vistas. Pretty much only played operations, with defense being my preference, just for the sensation of the start of each game, where everyone is at their battle stations on turrets, raining down hellfire onto the attackers, which is a feeling you also get using some of the behemoth vehicles like the armored train, just being big, clunky, but powerful. My main self-assigned role was Tank Buster. I tried to take down every vehicle I saw, and the prone anti-tank gun had fantastic range. It killed people in one shot and caused tanks to flee if they got hit unexpectedly. My secondary role was Tank Gunner Engineer. Just trying to keep my squad's tank alive was great. The guns were fun. Initially, from seeing the game, I wasn't sure how would I feel about the amount of fully automatic guns, but I thought they were implemented well, and I switched between guns quite a lot depending on the situation. The only thing I hated was getting murked by snipers, but that is to be expected with this kind of game. Now, this game could have been higher on my list, but for some reason I wasn't able to play the single player story missions due to the frame rate. When I played multiplayer, it was fine. I got 60 FPS, but when I played the campaign, I was only on 10 to 15, and it was like a slideshow. It's a bit weird because I haven't experienced something like that before. So yeah. Number 8. Teamfight Tactics. This game is one I always find myself returning to, and that's because you're always on the same playing field as everyone else with the same setup. There's nothing you need to grind or unlock prior, and they constantly release new innovations using the same core mechanics, and learning a new set is not as large of a time investment as it is learning a new game, and each time they do update you can try a new build or strategy, and it's really chill, especially if you're playing solo. There's no real competitive advantage and you can just focus on having fun instead of being optimal. I mean, you can be optimal and try hard, but you don't need to be. There's also the RNG side, so you always have a chance to win, and because it's RNG, it can create some pretty interesting matchups and scenarios that you just don't expect. Also, each round only requires a few clicks, so I can play entirely with one hand while eating or watching a video, and also the TV show Arcane came out a few months ago and definitely got me back into the world of League of Legends. If you haven't watched Arcane, go watch it. Number 7. Warhammer 40k Dawn of War. I really enjoy a good RTS with a campaign and cinematics, and I wish they were more not focusing as much on PvP, but some more enjoyable PvE that makes you invested beyond just winning. Dawn of War does just that as you lead your Space Marines against the Eldar, Orcs and Chaos on a glorious crusade. With this game, I felt I could always focus on the action and moving units around instead of micromanaging resources, as in this game they're not finite. You just go ahead and capture strategic points and keep them defended and move on. Units are also interesting as instead of making one dude, you make a squad and then upgrade that squad in different ways with reinforcements, adding captains, apothecaries which are medics, buying different weapons for different builds, missiles against vehicles, heavy bolters for long range defense. So even though there are only 14 units in the game, the customization of each unit, squad or vehicle makes it feel like a lot more. It's also my first step into the lore of 40k, as I've always seen the minis but never had any connection, and the representation of each race was interesting through the world, characters, models, animation, cutscene, story, etc., and gave real character to each faction. Cannon fodder Imperials, big dumb Daka Orcs, Stone Cold Marines, elitist Eldar, and seedy Chaos. Progression is pretty standard, with each mission introducing new units, enemy types and objectives. My favourite unit was the Predator just because of big beefy gun tank, and the game made me want to get the miniatures. I haven't yet, but I want to once I get back to the UK. My only main negatives for the game is it is a little bit dated visually and it plays in 4x3. I wasn't able to get it working in widescreen resolution, but I guess it did add a bit of a retro vibe. Number 6. Pathfinder Kingmaker. There are so many things I can praise in this game, and it is without a doubt one of the best CRPGs ever made. Huge character and class customization, a good variety of companions, in-depth world building, interesting and main side quests that don't feel like filler. Everything you do has an impact on the world and gives you more lore. Expansive dungeons, convo dialogue, and an alignment system which gives you multiple outcomes, reactions and flavor text. That's not even including the kingdom building, management, choosing advisors, buildings, artisans, solving problems, seizing opportunities, and not only that, the game lasts years with each act being pretty much enough content to be its own game. All sounds great, right? So why is it not my number 1? That is because I've not completed it yet. The best thing is also a bad thing. The length. This game is so long that I've had to put it down and play other games just so I can have some variety in my entertainment. I played for 3 months over the summer and have only finished chapter 3, and there are 6 chapters total. And I like to complete and explore everything, which is why it's taking so long. To the game's credit though, you can cut the time down drastically by having the kingdom management be automated alongside your companions leveling. But I don't want to miss a huge part of the game, and leveling other characters gives you a much better idea of your party's capabilities and strengths when it comes to combat. So yeah, this is a good problem, too much content, all of which I have thoroughly enjoyed. I just need the mental fortitude to prepare myself for jumping back in, as it is a game that requires your full concentration and commitment. Number 5. The Evil Within 2. Do you know my favourite kind of horror games? The ones that let me fight back. And you do a lot of that as Sebastian Castigliones on a mission to save your daughter, who you thought was dead, out of the Matrix, which is named STEM, which was supposed to be perfect but is now a nightmare. Everyone who dies in the game dies in real life. Whoa. Sounds a little cheesy, but it was thoroughly engaging, and as we go through the world to discover how this reality came to be, finding out what went wrong, searching for survivors, and seeing how many met their end, along with uncovering secrets that were hidden. Now, is the story better than the first game? It's hard to say as the pacing is changed by the game's structure. The first game is much more streamlined and linear, not offering a lot in terms of exploration and allowing the devs to have large control on how and when you are presented the story, as there is not a lot of deviation. Here in the second game, it is much more open world with instant space locations that can always be returned to minus some story locations. This more open design allows you to do extra content like exploring, finding resources, upgrades, weapons, lore, and do side quests, all using your radio tracker to navigate. You're not forced to do this though, as you can always go straight for the main objective. I quite like that I would be put into some situations where I'd have limited ammo and a group of enemies is on the main path up ahead, and I could choose and make the decision if I can risk going a side route to get extra ammo, but it may put me in a situation where I spend more than I gain. If I make a big mistake, it could put me at worse odds than I previously would have been on by first making the attempt. Yet you may also get resources, upgrades, and new weapons, so there's always a benefit. It's just that, are you making the right call at that time? The weapon range is your standard survival horror affair, having pistols, shotguns, sniper, it's got flamethrower and a crossbow, all of which are acquired by exploring, crafting and progressing the story, can be upgraded through workbenches. The crossbow is the highlight due to the different bolt types, so it's like having 5 different weapons in one and is used universally, not just for combat but also exploration. The common enemies are pretty basic, having some semi-sentient zombies with some deformed variations. There is a guardian type who's pretty sick though. The bosses are the most interesting as they have huge story significance, lead-ups, reveals, tension, and final fight/execution. They were the best as they were visually and mechanically stimulating. My favourite was Obscura, how she fit into the story, who she was, and what she eventually became. The only main thing I hated was that there was one enemy in particular that would randomly appear throughout the story and you had to run or hide, and if they got you, it insta-killed you. Supposed to be really scary, but I found it just plain annoying and kind of cheap. Number 4, Homeworld Remastered. I didn't expect to love this game as much as I did, picked it up for only £2 and was pleasantly surprised. So, Homeworld Remastered is an RTS, it includes the first and second game, and it is set entirely in space. You play as the Kashan, travelling to your ancient homeworld, Higara, after your planet, Karak, has been destroyed by the Taidan Empire for the crime of developing hyperspace technology. You travel through the galaxy on the way, building up your fleet, meeting new races, and fighting. This game, while the original did come out in 1999, gave me a distinct sense of nostalgia from classic sci-fi. The only dialogue we hear is from the leaders of each faction. It's very to the point, yet otherworldly. Monotone, devoid of emotion. The mission is priority, often given before or after an engagement. So yeah, it's a pretty simple concept, not overly complicated, but it doesn't need to be. Where the game really shines is the combat. In this RTS, you don't just play on the X and Y axis, but also the Z axis, allowing you to maneuver ships above or below enemies, just like you'd expect in space. All ships are produced from the mothership out of materials mined from asteroids or collected from destroyed vessels, so even the location you choose to fight could hinder your ability to scavenge resources from there, in the event that they're closer to an enemy rather than you. Your and the enemy fleet will include fighters, corvettes, frigates, and capital ships. The larger are more powerful and durable, yet slower. As long as you use your ships to their strengths, small ships are fully capable of taking out bigger ships. There is a great deal of micromanagement that can be done, which is reduced by some of the in-game systems. Units can be assigned to different groups, formations, and stances, allowing quick change between being defensive, aggressive, or somewhere in between. Once you get fully into it and have built out your fleet, battles feel just like Star Wars Episode 3 above Coruscant, with hundreds of vessels of all different sizes battling it out. The pathing of each unit really guarantees this, as when ships fight, they aren't just stationary, they fly around each other, attacking and evading just like a nest of hornets. As if that wasn't good enough, the second game scales it up. In the first, making one interceptor unit will produce just 1, but in the second it will produce 5 in their own little squad. Therefore, battles just scale up. My dream for Homeworld is that one day they take the framework and develop a Star Wars game using the same mechanics. Republic versus CIS, Empire versus Rebels. The only bad thing I have to say is about the difficulty. It's not that bad, and the game will scale the enemy size depending on your fleet size, so that's good. If your fleet is smaller, less enemies, bigger, more. Unfortunately, for each game I found that the last mission was significantly harder than the rest. It took so many retries when other missions I'd only need to do 1 or 2. but even then I passed most the first time. So yeah, just an unexpected difficulty spike. Number 3. Final Fantasy XIII. I first played this on Xbox 360, being hyped for it since seeing the trailer at the Tokyo Game Show and being blown away with the quality of the cinematics, and I have to say it still holds up really well today, and is actually the only Final Fantasy game I have ever completed. But then again, I've only played this and 7. Many complained about 13 back in the day with criticisms that it is too linear and the gameplay is simple. However, that's why I enjoyed it so much, as it's such a relaxing experience just pushing on, getting the story without the need to grind or level, because you can take on all enemies as you meet them, with the exception of Chapter 13, which opens up and gives some harder optional enemies to try your hand at. The story itself was pretty enjoyable. You see, I love 3D animated movies, and I'm not talking about Disney or Pixar, but movies like Gantz, Starship Troopers, Resident Evil, Netflix's Love, Death and Robots. Just for what a more realistic and adult style of animation is able to do, and with Final Fantasy XIII having so many hours of high quality cutscenes, was just like a long movie with all the spectacle that comes with it. If you do want to watch or play, however, don't do it on YouTube, because a lot of VFX and other smaller details are lost due to compression, so enjoy it natively uncaptured, it's sharper and there's less noise. The characters, who I will now list in best to worst order, Lightning, Sage, Fang, Vanille, Snow and Hope, are together for necessity and not by choice, as they were forced to become l'Cie, aka rebels, by a fal'Cie, aka a god, to destroy Cocoon, their home world. Cocoon is fearful of Grand Pulse, a different world, which is where the fal'Cie god that converted the protagonists is from. If they are unable to fulfill their focus, aka their goal, they will become Seath monsters. So that's the main overview. I like that the characters all had different reactions and ideas in regard to their situation, they argue, and they literally go off in different directions and do their own things. It has some pretty good character development, although cheesy at times. Saz is the most enjoyable to watch for me because he is literally just some dude. The rest are special and he's just kinda some guy with a gun, and is really useful just as a reality check every now and then. The combat is simple and reminded me of a mobile gacha game, as in you can cast your own abilities, but it's much faster to use the auto attack feature. The game gets more interesting when it comes to the synergy system that puts characters into different stances: to offensive, a tank, healer, buff and debuff, which can be mixed and matched in your party of 3. So the main gameplay is not memorizing attack types or enemy weaknesses, but choosing the correct synergy stance for the situation. I actually really enjoyed it. Unfortunately, you don't unlock the full system and what it's capable of until well into the game, and even like 20 hours in, you still get little tutorial tooltips unlocking more of the system. So it really should have unlocked it well before that, and at times, as I have said before, characters go off in their own directions, so sometimes you're using the synergy system with only 2 characters, which is a bit limiting. Another unlockable feature is when characters in the story do get true development and face their fears, they unlock an ultimate ability in the form of an Eidolon, don't know how to pronounce that, or a summons. They are pretty much cutscenes in a fight and do damage, but I mainly use them for full party heal and reviving. Use them just for damage, they actually make most fights much longer than they need to be. So yeah, beautiful, just a little long. Overall, there is a lot more I could talk about. The enemies are varied and interesting, the world is stunning, the scenes are memorable, and the music is so high tier, it even has Leona Lewis if you can remember her. The art style is all fantastic, just upgrading characters and unlocking nodes is satisfying. There's so many little things I enjoyed, but I'm going to move on to the next game. Number 2, Mad Max. This game is here for the polar opposite of Final Fantasy XIII, which is the gameplay. Well, it has to be, as the story is so simple. Set before Fury Road, you are Max and chased down by Scrotus, who steals your car and leaves you for dead. You need to get revenge and build your Magnus Opum. It's pretty straightforward. I felt that this game fully captured the Mad Max vibe, probably because the movie was used as reference in the world design, locations, characters, cars, and even though it is just a desert, it is a beautiful one. Now, the biggest criticism about the game is that it is open world game, and that it's not necessarily reinventing the wheel. Arkham-style combat system, driving, settlements, upgrades, territories, viewpoints, loots, reputation, collectibles, it's all there, as you'd expect. But that doesn't mean it's bad, as it all feels like part of the world and natural to your progression. The driving combat mix is the best part of the game, as you race, chase, kill and steal. At the start, the controls are a bit janky, but that's because you're driving junk. As you upgrade through finding chassis, parts, and buying upgrades, the controls feel tighter. Not just straight up better though, because even until the end game build, the driving fully represents your driving style through the modifications that you make. Fast yet weak, slow and clunky, but an absolute tank. The level of customization is huge. You can change up rims, engines, chassis, wheels, nitro, grills, suspension, exhausts, armor, boarding spikes, side burners, all thanks to your faithful Blackfinger Chumbucket, who also supplies the Magnus Opum's weaponry and rides along with you. The Harpoon yanks car parts and peeps, the Sniper picks off outpost guards, Thunderpoon is an RPG, and also you have your shotgun to shoot wheels and few tanks as well as ramming. To make it more interesting, you don't have unlimited use of the weaponry. The guns have ammo limits, the Harpoon a cooldown, ramming takes damage. So on this Fury road you need to switch through different methods, which keeps things engaging. Chumbucket is amazing. He, like many in this world, are car zealots, and I love his dedication to the magnum opus. My favourite bit of world building is how things have new vocabulary as the old vocabulary was forgotten. Binoculars are long lookers, dogs are dinkies. Oh yeah, you get a dog, you build a house and you use it to sweep mines, that's fantastic. Butchering animals is called dismantling, injuries are fixed, not healed, etc. The storms and weather VFX were a highlight, looked great and were deadly just like the movie. Exploring the area was fun, each territory had a threat level, but as you complete stuff like destroy camps, caravans, sniper towers and effigies, it would reduce the threat level and the amount of enemies in that area, so it actually feels like you have an effect on the bandit gangs. It also meant that backtracking to a previous location was less of a hassle. There's also settlements to upgrade that provide resources, and the improvements are visual, feeling like you're actually making a change. I guess that is what hooked me so much, that the game has all of these little connected systems where no matter what I choose to do, it feels like I'm making progress. Number 1. Nier Automata. It is no surprise that this is my game of the year, as Nier the original is my favourite game of all time. I love how this game, like its predecessor, is so versatile with its use of game mechanics and art style to achieve the vision and atmosphere that was desired by the developers. At the core, it is a hack and slash and is fluid with the attack variety and how it is tied to your movement, so combat is never static and always fast paced. Also a range of combo attacks that change depending on the weapon you have equipped, light sword, heavy sword, spear, but also which one are you using, as well as abilities you can use while moving. Yet, we also have so much more, as using the core mechanics, at times we have a bullet hell shooter, an action RPG, a side-scroller, chasers, platforming, hacking, all from changing the camera angle when desired along with RPG elements. My favourite aspect is the story and Nier's special characteristic of replaying the game to learn new things about the world, often from a different point of view, which can change how you felt about a previously interpreted scenario. It's not a complete slog though, as you don't need to replay the entire game and side quest progress is carried forward. The improvement Automata makes though is that it also added new levels and gameplay, so it's not just playing a new cutscene in the old place, but playing different characters in relation at the time of your main protagonist, 2B. I really like the characters 2B, 9S and A2, their designs, relationships, mannerisms and roles, as their android selves learn about the world, robots and humanity while developing their own feelings along with new ways of thinking. However, I feel that the story and world building was further enhanced by the fact that I had played the original Nier, as it was quite a niche game when it released, so Automata for many people is their first experience. Due to this, and that Automata is set so far in the future, creates an extra layer of mystery onto the already captivating story. Not only what is going on now, but how this location became this way, what happened to the people, what did they become this, is it not? Even the weapons, they come with a short lore summary, but it doesn't do them justice. Like stumbling across the largest greatsword in the game, where it doesn't really mean much normally, it's an optional extra, but for me it was a fountain of nostalgia as I knew the history, how it was created and why. Adding on to that is the music, which in my opinion is the best video game music ever created, and it brought so much to convey the mood of every situation you found yourself in and is just plain beautiful, especially in a certain location featuring a white flower which leaves you in awe. Overall, Nier Automata is a fantastic game that I enjoyed so much that during my time playing made me rush home from work every day just to experience some more, and it's been a while since a game truly made me feel that way, and is the reason why it is my game of the year for 2021. It begs the question now, is Nier Automata my favourite game of all time? Unfortunately no, that spot is still reserved for the original, of which I'll need to get around to playing the remake at some point. If you're still here, thanks for watching. If you liked, like, dislike. If you've got any views on my top 10, let me know below in the comments. And if you want to see more from me, you can always subscribe. Thank you for watching and goodbye.